Now I should be back. Okay, now I should be back up. It should be back up now. Um, Now I just can't hear myself, which is perfectly fine because I am here present. Um, but yeah, no. Hi, Marisol. I don't know your pronouns. But midterms are coming up. Damn. That's rough. Um, at least it's not finals, right? So you have this is gonna be your test run for when finals come through, homie, and then shit's gonna get rough. Get enough sleep. Remember the questions that were asked on your midterm because some version of them always comes up in a final. Um, and get enough sleep and drink enough water, and you'll be chill. Um, but yeah, no, it's nice to see you. I haven't seen you here. I've seen a couple other folks here, but welcome to. I mean, you've probably seen the live streams, but probably not live. Anyway, so yeah, no, I'm back from San Diego. I was there for since Wednesday, and I just got back here like 3 hours ago, 3 4 hours ago. Um, I usually don't stay so long when I'm asked to go lecture, but I have a lot of really close friends in San Diego, so I decided to stay like an extra day. I got to spend time with one of my friends who's also my mentor, Luis, who goes by Brown Boy Reads on Instagram. Um, Luis is like one of like he like if people are pillars, like he is definitely like one of like my pillars and like my like house of knowledge. Um, we often talk about what it means to be like Chicanx and like of native descent, and what it means to exist as like queer brown people, right? So me and him, like, um, when we talk and we drink and we party, like it also has a lot. Like there's always like some sort of like discourse that's happening too. So like I missed him a lot because I hadn't seen him like in a year. Because I was in San Diego in May for my lecture at UC San Diego, but I didn't get to see him. He had actually broken his ankle at the time. Um, but this time that I went to go lecture at San Diego State, I got to see him. I also got to see Nancy, who goes by Hija de tu Madre on Twitter. She's a disabled activist who's a Chicana, and I love her so much. We got to like visit this like lucha libre themed restaurant, but even though it was like lucha libre themed, it was like still like pretty like high femme. Like the wall was like a bright pink, and like everything was like really gaudy. It was so dope. My plate sucked, tbh, but like her plate was pretty dope. So I got to see her, and my lecture was actually like super cool. I think this is like my first. Nah, I think. Mm, it's not the first time I felt good about my lectures, but it is the first time that I can say like this is definitely the best. Like that the San Diego State University conversation like lecture that I gave, like that was like probably like my best lecture that I've ever given ever. Everybody was really hype. Like the crowd was all like queer folks, trans folks of color. There was like, of course, some white people because, of course, like this is a university, primarily white institution. But like, there was like a like a solid absence of like cishet men, um, which like I would previously have minded, right? But like at this point, I didn't because I really didn't care. I'm like kind of tired of dealing with their shit, right? Like I think when me and Chicanisma went to Portland, there was some cishet men in the crowd, and you can sense like the tension, right? But at this San Diego, and I also sensed a tension at another talk that I did a little while. Oh, at College of San Mateo, like a year ago. But this one, it was like mostly queer folks, trans folks, most of them of color, right? Mostly black and brown folks, and it was fucking great. There was some back and forth in the last hour. That's because I built the talk in that way, right? Because if my talk was on community healing, and one of my things about community healing is that like, how the fuck is a stranger like me, a stranger, like gonna go into this community that I don't know and like talk to them about like this is how you heal, right? Like it doesn't make any fucking sense. So for the first hour of this workshop is always like me like giving a lecture on like foundations, right? And like my personal history with like and doing my work as like an activist, an organizer, a healer, an educator. And then the second hour is like me kind of like questioning them a lot of things and like demanding like not demand well yeah no kind of demanding like some answers to like what community and what healing looks like for them, and then I unpacked that with them. But this one was super fucking dope. Like it was a bunch of folks who were like ready to participate and like ready to like really like who really wanted to like find what community healing felt like for them. And some of the questions that I ask are questions that like people don't get asked enough, right? Like I think when we do like social justice work, we don't have like a end game in mind. So one of the big questions that I ask is like, what does liberation look like to you? Like, what does it really look like to you? And you'll find that like a lot of people like they don't know what that looks like to them. Also, like y'all can answer in the chat like what liberation looks like to y'all. I want to hear what y'all have to say, but often people are like, shit, like I never thought about that. Like I was just fighting injustice and like blah blah blah. And like to me, it's just like yeah, we can fight injustice and we can do all that, but like what's gonna happen at the end of the day? Like say like tomorrow we're all liberated. Like what's that look like? You know, do we what do we have? What did we lose? Who did we lose? Why did we lose them? You know, like I think something as I'm like learning more, right? Because even though I have a platform and I talk about issues and shit and things that affect me, like I can't pretend that I know everything, right? So one of the things that Ebb then, who used to go by Airbrand, one of the things they once wrote was like, consider who you're gonna lose in your revolution, right? Something like that. And it was about like how we often don't think of like disabled folks, right? When we do like social justice work, and like how like we already like for like a proletariat like uprising and like we're gonna tear that shit down, right? But like who are we losing? Like and at what cost is like liberation gonna be? So that's something that I constantly try to unpack for folks. And so this talk was like really good because everybody was like participating and like really vibing and like people understood my humor, which is something that like doesn't always happen. I think that I made like a joke at Portland State University about like how I thought like Carly Rae Jepsen was like a communist leader, and some people were like, "What?" And then this bitch is crazy. But like some people did get it. It was mostly the queer folks. But like some people don't, and so I was happy to be in a place where people understand my sense of humor. And to me, like humor is like a big thing. Like if I can make you laugh, right, then I can make you understand me. I think sometimes, and so I was really glad, and I couldn't have asked for a better crowd. There's a couple people here now. Feel free to introduce yourself. Feel free to ask me like any questions about anything. This can be about like anything I've said or posted or like anything that's going on in your life too. I'm going to be here for a full hour, so I want to hear what's up with y'all. Oh yeah, I'm sorry your day was long, Marisol. I don't. The thing about like the thing about college is that like the days seem long, but somehow time goes by too quickly. Like months go by too quickly. If that makes any sense, but I totally get it. When I was in college, I used to wake up at 9 a.m. And not go to sleep until 3 a.m. Right, and so that was like shit, like 6 hours of sleep. So I had like 18-hour days, but those days, that stretched out long. But like somehow, like I didn't have enough time to do everything at the end of the day, right? In the few weeks that I've been gone, I saw La Santa Cecilia. No, not Santa Cecilia. I saw them a while ago. I saw Lila Downs. like a week ago in concert. If you're new to me, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming and such viewers full experience buffering. Sorry, that's weird. YouTube is telling me that things are buffering. I don't know how to make it faster. Sorry, y'all. I feel like it's buffering for some reason for y'all. Okay, and I'm live now? Again? Okay, am I live? I hope I am live. If I'm live, comment in the thing. YouTube just told me that I wasn't live anymore for some reason, so like I need some correspondence. Okay, yes, okay, I am. Okay, thank you. Hi, Alva. What are your pronouns, Alva? Sorry that I cut off. I just lost a couple people. Hopefully they come back. But yeah, okay. So what was I? What was I? I forgot where I was. Yeah, no, I was in San Diego, college, taking care of myself. And that's something I talk about, right? Like taking care of ourselves. I think a lot of the time, like when we talk about like community healing, we like look at it as like I have to heal my community, right? Like I have to help everybody, right? As opposed to like, you know, I should help people, right? We should be helping our community, but also our community should be helping us, right? Because if all we're doing is just like dumping ourselves into other people, right? Like dumping all of our energy, like at the end of the day, we're gonna end up with nothing for ourselves, right? And like we can't help others if we can't help ourselves, right? So that's one of the big things Oh yeah, and I was talking about how I saw Lila Downs in concert, right? If you don't know Lila Downs, she's a Mexican folk singer who's of half British, half Zapotec Mexican descent. And all of her songs talk about like decolonization and like reconnecting and things of that nature. But when I saw her in concert, it was like nothing but white people in the crowd. Like, and it was like, and nobody was standing, and like nobody was dancing, and I felt really hurt. I felt really like it made me question a lot of what I was doing and like a lot of the ways that I was creating, right? Because she's like this big artist that talks about like decolonization and all this shit, but at the end of the day, somehow her audience is all white, and so I like I legitimately cried about like how like who are we selling our magic to, right? And I talked to my friend Anthony, who goes by Anthony's on Twitter, and they were just like, you know, like we have to think about also, but like who can afford to buy our art, right? Like, you know, a lot of the times as we make it, right, we become inaccessible. And so I saw that like in real time with Lila Downs, right? Her whole production was beautiful, but I was like sharing this beauty with a bunch of white folks who didn't really grasp a lot of what she was talking about, right? But I think like in her encore, I think a lot of like Latinx folks and other people of color, like we were just like we were fed up with like how whack the audience was. That everybody just got up and like we like rushed the stage and we were all dancing and it was amazing. At the end, but for a long time it was just like everybody sitting down while she was like dancing her cumbias on stage, right? And I think that I when I first started talking about this, I confused it with La Santa Cecilia, who's like a cumbia, like a English cumbia band, who also kind of like toys with rock. Because when I went to go see them, like a couple months ago. All their crowd was white, and like I came ready to like para cumbiar, right, and like to dance my ass off, and like the whole venue was packed with white folks who didn't want to fucking dance, right? Who didn't want like, who didn't understand, like, you know, how to like carry the rhythm of the Santa Cecilia's music. And so that was like really that was like the beginning of this eye-opening journey, right? That I'm like going through, right? So yeah. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Feel free to comment anything. I want to know how your day has been. I want to know how your last month has been. If you listen to Bitter Brown Femmes, my podcast was Chicanisma, you'll know that like September was a shitty ass month for me. Um, One thing that I regret not mentioning in the podcast was that like my depression did spike because of like trauma, right? Because a lot of times we think like trauma is like over and done once we like talk about it one time or whatever, right? But no, trauma like continues to happen right as we exist and as we navigate the world. And sometimes I think one thing that I wrote about is and the one thing that I like to talk about is this concept of the pain body, right? So we exist as people, right? But we also but at the end of the day, like a lot of times we carry like a weight on ourselves, right? And that's our trauma, that's our pain, right? Our sadness, our stress, and this stuff like that has like a real implication on us, right? And that real implication is like the pain body, right? It keeps us from doing a lot of things, right? So Claudia Rankin talks about it in her book Citizen. She talks about this in the way of microaggressions, right? In the way um, in the way that like um, as a black woman, she's like she knows she's gonna experience a microaggression, right? And so she deals with that. She talks about how like she wakes up and she barfs every day, right? And then she not literally maybe maybe figuratively, but when she goes about her day, it's like she's holding her breath, right? Because she knows she can't really breathe safely, and it's not until she gets back home at the end of her work day that she can like exhale, right? Um, and so that's kind of like one of the implications of the pain body and like this trauma and this like readiness as people of color to be constantly traumatized. And so September was like that for me. It was really rough. I'm like also like leaving my job. Like I have like 2 to 3 weeks left of work left in my current position. Um, and that might actually be cut short because I haven't I am getting booked to talk at colleges, and I'm not gonna forego these opportunities to stay in a job that I hate. At this point, so I might actually leave my job sooner than I thought, which means that um, like my funds might be like cut short, right? Because even though like I'm getting paid to go to these colleges, um, that money I don't see that money a lot of times for like I think the longest I waited for a check from a speaking engagement was like 4 months. Um, and so that meant like that has like real life implications, right? So I'm gonna be struggling for a bit, but I'll manage. But yeah, no. So I'm going. And not only was I going through like surviving traumas, but I was also dealing with like this transition in life. So yeah, how do you cope with being in a space that is being dominated by white people that you're trying to enjoy that wasn't cultivated for them? I go to a mostly private union and I've been struggling. Oof. Honestly, homie, to me it was about finding other people of color, right? So in college, it was about me finding other Korean trans people of color, other Latinxes, Chicanxes, and honestly, like holding space for each other, and that meant a lot of things. Um, so actually, in college, thanks, Alva. Actually, in college, I actually didn't go to the clubs and the bars that were like popular for a lot of college kids. I went to house parties that were mostly Latinx, Chicanx, or held by other people of color, mostly other mostly other people of color, queer and trans folks. So that's what it was for me. But I went to school in California, so I know that I'm going to Colby College in Maine next Thursday, and by the student I was talking to, they were like, "This is a white ass school. There's like 20 people of color here. Like, uh, we just like want to see somebody successful doing it." And I was like, "Okay, shit." So I know that like my experience is not available to everyone in who goes to a university, right? But know this, like know that there's other people of color, um, like also like feeling the same way you are, right? They feel hella alone in your university, in your space. So yeah. Oh, Brandon, hey, what's up? Thanks. Yeah, this is one of my favorite shirts. I was like hanging out with a friend yesterday, and like some gays were like walking by, and somehow like white gays always think that I'm straight, and I think it's because of like this like masculinizations of like folks who are perceived as men of color, and so when like they looked at me weird. Um, but then they like read my shirt. This is one of my favorite shirts I like wear like once a week maybe. Then they were like, "Oh, he's family," and I'm like, "Nah, bitch, I don't know you." Yeah. So again, feel free to introduce yourselves. I know we just got like a wave of people. Introduce yourselves, your pronouns. William, hey, what's up, baby? Introduce yourselves, your pronouns. Anything you want to ask me, anything you want to say about your day, about life, any issues you want to bring up in like the world. We'll unpack those. We'll talk about that shit. Like it's whatever. A lot of Latinxes in my college town wasn't great. Yeah. If anything, it made me open my eyes and appreciate my identity and hometown more. Yeah, no. And it can be rough, especially when we're like, a lot of folks in the Latinx community don't want to like, don't want to admit the ways that we're racialized, right? So like there was like a lot of, in college I also, for a while I worked at a cafe, right? And there was a cafe that like, I didn't know until I started working there that like, you would only get hired there if the managers stalked you and would tell that you were fun, right? And that was their criteria to hiring you. And that was because this cafe was basically like, as I found out, like a little fraternity, right? So they had like, there was constant parties, and there was like hazing for like the managers. It was fucking odd. Um, and what I found out when I was working here, I was considered fun because I am fun. I'm fucking fun as shit. But what I found out while I was working there was that like the Latinx that they hired were so invested in whiteness that they didn't give a fuck about like building community or like anything else, right? Because they had the good life, right? They were partying with white folks. They were drinking white people liquor, right? Like Grey Goose all day, every day, right? And so that's one of the things I found, and it wasn't until and it wasn't not until, but because of my organizing and like educating, that I was like, holy shit, like there's just like this huge disconnect, right? Because I too was one of those people who were like, we're all Latinx, right? Like we're all family, right? Just because like I'm from Southeast LA, so like, you had white Latinx and black Latinx and like mestizo Latinx, right? Like mestizex Latinx, like all living in harmony-ish, right? Of course, there was like microaggressions, but it was harder for us to tell, right? Because we're not taught about race as kids, in the Latinx community, right? I'm sure that that's a privilege that mestizex and white Latinx have. Of course, black Latinx are like constantly reminded of like their how they don't fit into the Latinx mold in popular media. But when I went to college, it became like incredibly apparent, right? Sorry, I like lost the chat. People are cultivating mostly. So yeah, folk superhero Marisol. That's how I dealt, right? I just like try to find my peoples, and that meant a lot of things. Sometimes it was my close knit Latinx Chicanx friend group only has two other queer people out of seven of us, right? And that doesn't mean that, like, of course I don't, love other queer or trans people. It just means that, like, people who understand my sense of humor are not always queer or trans people, right? Um, in my communities. But then my friends outside of, like, outside of my immediate, like, help system, like, most of them are queer or trans, and people of color, and or queer. Hey, love. Latinx. You're a senior year of high school, Marisol, or college? Activist group outside the university. Yeah, it was creepy as shit, William. I didn't even know this until, like, one day, like, I went to the back of the cafe when I was getting, like, some ingredient, because we made everything by hand. And then I saw them, like, stalking hella people, and they at some point I remember clearly one of them was like, "Oh, this girl is, like, out in the safari petting an elephant. Like, she's dangerous. We'll hire her." And I was like, "What the fuck?" That was so weird. Um, and yeah, we're also, yeah, I feel you, Marisol. You're probably, like, in social justice spaces. I remember one time I went to go speak at a college, and it was organized by a Chicana, right, a brown Chicana. But when I got there, it was a lot of white people, and I was like, holy shit! Like, it really made me doubt who I was, like, speaking to, right? But of course, all the people of color came on people of color time, and so, like, after, like, 10 minutes, it was, like, dominated by people of color. But no, like, it was weird when it was time for the Q&A, and then white people felt like the most empowered to talk, right? And I also felt this when I was organizing in college, and it was a lot of people from specifically, like, this co-op, right? So if you're not familiar with a co-op, it's like a mostly, like, kind of subsidized housing, right? And it's like self-sustaining homes, right? So they mostly grow their own vegetables and blah blah blah, and cook for each other. And so, in my university, rent for, like, a room was like $800, mostly, like, usually. But for co-ops, these people paid like $150, right, for their room, right? Because it was supposed to be, like, super progressive and super accessible. But the thing about, like, accessibility is that, like, it's ultimately managed by, like, white people, right? And so what I found in these spaces was that, like, yeah, it's all these, like, hippies, like, preaching, like, social justice, but all them bitches, like, had, like, that came from money, and it was a white space. And so that also, like, taught me the ways in which, like, a lot of social justice spaces were, like, really hypocritical, right? Because, like, a lot of the times we talk about, people judge what we say, right, without judging what we do, right? And we have to hold accountability for both things, right? We can't just hold people accountable, or, like, call people out for saying something wrong, right? We should, but that shouldn't be the only thing we call people out on. We should also call people out on their actions, right? But that was impossible to do in this co-op space where, like, it was all white folks, all moneyed, all somehow, even though they had, like, fucking money to boot, they somehow found it appropriate to only pay $150 for rent when they knew they could have paid more and given that space to someone who was of lower income, right? And so that's something that I also had to challenge a lot, right? Because back in college, I was also, like, the voice of the Chicanx Latinx community, particularly when it came to queer folks. Well, that's exactly, yeah, Marisol. You're dealing with that now. I can only imagine. And the thing is that, like, because the university is a system, it often replicates itself, right? Because it's easy to replicate something like that, right? It's easy to replicate a space where it's built off, like, accessibility and the labor of brown and black folks, right, indigenous folks, right? So I can only imagine, Marisol, the amount of, like, labor you're gonna have to do if you're available, right, for that labor. Also, I want to say, like, you don't, as much as you want to hold space for others, like, you don't have to. Like, sometimes it's okay to take care of yourself and step away from that. Yeah. I'm drinking a cranberry vodka tonight. Um, yeah, so feel free to ask me any questions. If not, I'll just continue talking about my life and what the fuck is going on. Um, let's see. I did want to address I think in the last podcast, the last live stream, I talked about how how somebody was like a mainstream activist was telling me that I was whitewashed, right? Um, and but now I have these other people, these other leftists telling me that I'm actually too cultured and holding it over people, right? And so now I'm like dealing with that, and I'm just like, bitch, like either I'm too cultured or I'm whitewashed. Like pick one. Um, so recently there was a couple of leftists, Chicanx leftists, who were weaponizing their identity as Chicanxes to excuse Mexican violence against its people, right? The violence of Mexico, the state, against its people, and other states. Um, and I took real offense to that, right? Because while some people are out here praising Mexico and claiming that we should give Aslan back to Mexico or whatever the fuck, while they're claiming all this nationalism, right? There's hella people, mostly indigenous folks and other disenfranchised folks, Afro Mexicanos, right? Mexicanexes, suffering because the state is not fucking acknowledging their hurt right now after the earthquake, right? So I gave the example of how my grandmother, she still hasn't seen relief in her hometown in Puebla, right? She's okay, and most of the people there, there was death, of course, but a lot of people there are okay, but a lot of them can't go back to business because their streets are they're filled with rubble, and when the buildings fell, they don't have the machinery to clean that out, right? And the state is so focused on Mexico City, right? Because that's their crown jewel, that they don't put out resources to help places like Oaxaca and Morelos, right? And Puebla, which is where my family's from. And so when you excuse state violence, you also, under the banner of we're all Chicanexes and it's okay or whatever the fuck, you excuse the death of a lot of people, and so that really fucked with me. And so I posted a lot of angry tweets, and somebody would try to call me out on it, and I was like, I'm not gonna apologize. I I really hate nationalism. I think that I'm honestly I don't think I'm well read enough to claim the anarchist political banner, but I think that's where a lot of my beliefs would fall. If that makes any sense to y'all, and I'm an anti-nationalist, anti-statehood. Um, so yeah, and so that's something that I've also been dealing with. Is people I people pulling me in different directions that I wasn't sure that I was ready to engage in that type of criticism or call out or call in, right? Because to me it was just I'm just a little queer femme chicanx, right? I don't um I didn't see myself as the holder of the culture at all, right? And it actually hurt more to hear people say that I was um, weaponizing the culture than it did to hear people call me whitewash, because I've been called whitewash all my life, right? I think that a lot of times as queer folks or trans folks, because we separate ourselves from our community for our safety, a lot of the times, we are called whitewash or race traitors or whatever the fuck, right? Because we do it for safety sometimes, right? Stalky, that's wild. Trying to keep people for friends I found community elsewhere college. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. Yeah, no, college organizing is a fucking worse. I think it was me and Anthony's who were talking about how um, sometimes we don't know what the value of student activism is just because. And that's not to discourage y'all. I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my student activism. Um, but sometimes it can be a lot, and I think sometimes we forget that we went to college to like get a degree and like you know do something, help people or whatever. And I know a lot of people who dropped out of college because of their activism, right? Because they took up all their time. And so, because there's no class for this, there's no way to know how you're doing it right or how you're doing it wrong, right? Um, and so, it's all about like, todo, like everything in, measured, right? So, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you're taking care of your community if if that's what you want to do. But also one of the big things that I lecture about is that like make sure that you're mentoring someone, right? Because all of our work that we do while we're in college, all of that shit, if we're not mentoring someone to pass that knowledge down and to pass down that work down, then our 4 years are gonna be for shit, right? Because the administrations know that we are only there for 4 years. So that means they can ignore us for 4 years and then everyone will forget and then and then they can start a new cycle, right? So the thing about like whole student activism is you have to invest in educating the people that are going to come after you or it'll be for shit. Honestly, a lot of our efforts will be for shit if we don't educate the next generation. And that's not only for student activism, that's also for us now. One of the big reasons that I talk about nationalism and Chicanese and Chicanx communities is because there's a big rise in Chicanismo and people identifying as Chicanx that I hadn't seen in a long time, right? But with that rise also comes in a replication of our mistakes, right? Also comes a replication of machismo and queer antagonism, trans antagonism, right? Mexicocentrism, um, anti-immigrant, anti-Central American sentiments. Um, we keep replicating that shit, which means that like in those 40 plus years since the first wave of Chicanismo came to be, we haven't learned shit, right? Our anti-blackness, our anti-indigeneity, all of our shit is still there, right? So that's one of the reasons why like I talk about all these things a lot is because like I see our potential, but I also see the ways in which we're fucking up, like as Chicanexes, right? Um, and so, yeah. But feel free to talk about yourselves too. I want to know what the heck y'all are up to, and any questions you had for me, anything I've said, all my platforms. Um, yeah. I've in the next episode of Bitter Brown Fans is gonna come out sooner than later. It'll be out Tuesday. That's my interview with Gabby Rivera, who's the first queer Latina writer of a mainstream comic book for mainstream queer Latinx superhero. So I'm like really hype about that. It's like one of our best episodes, which is like not like it was a really low bar, tbh. Yeah, our sound sucked for like it's gonna even this episode or like our sound kind of sucked because we were still trying to like get like a handle of like our mics. But episode 4, which is the next one, not the one being released on Tuesday, that one should be good. Like as far as sound goes. But yeah. What else have I been up to? I have been editing the podcast. I'm going on lectures. So like, I've been really blessed that like I have been booked a lot of weeks in the next in this fall quarter, fall semester or whatever. Um, it doesn't mean that I can do this for a living like at all, but it does mean that like I made the right decision as far as like quitting my job, which I'm really happy about, and I'll have some more time to write. So I'm currently writing a couple of essays that like I postponed from September. I thought I had the strength to write a couple of essays in September that I really didn't. I was really triggering myself. But hopefully in October, these essays will come out in different publications, if not only for y'all. Um, and so that's what I'm doing in October. And then I'll have most of February off, and I'll be visiting my family in LA. Um, maybe not. Yeah, I'll be visiting them shortly. I don't get along with my family like the best, which is like okay. I've learned to deal with them, and if the holidays are triggering for you, like I hella feel you, like they hella are for me too. Um, I usually avoided going home for long spurts, but right now, like I really miss my city. Like I really miss LA. Like I have like a really strong connection to that city, and it was mostly because like as a kid, like I found like hospice in the city, like not only in the streets because I did like I was like sleeping in the streets for a minute, but also like in the ways that it taught me how to be um, a human, how to care, right? Like I spent I can probably anytime we drive through a freeway, I can probably point in a space that like saved me, right? Like I could probably be like, oh, the comic book shop over there. Like when I was 16, like that was my home. Or like I can point to like a club in like WeHo and be like, oh shit, that was my roof for a minute, right? And so LA has a lot of my heart. And so this will be the first time that I can go visit there peacefully, and probably not spend as much time with my family, even though I will see them. Yeah. So feel free to ask anything else. I'll be on for another 10 minutes. Um, feel free to. We also talked about canceling people recently on the podcast. And people have been really mad at me for not canceling Cardi B, right? Um, and like, I'm not like I love Cardi B. Like I'm gonna say that straight up. Like I love her. She's like she reminds me of my sisters, right? And like a lot of the hood girls that I knew growing up, and I've been following her for like 2 years now. I remember her when she, just used to make funny skits, right? At the same time, I know that she's been trans antagonistic, and that she's, in one of her skits, she perpetuated like rape culture, right? I also want to hold the complexity that like people don't want to hold, right? Sometimes when we, as like people who are doing social justice work, social justice writing, we talk about how like hood folks, when we talk about us as like folks that could understand social justice concepts, right? We forget that like sometimes people from the hood, right? We don't want to learn that. Like I that's why I gave one of my narratives of like how when I was like a hood, like when I moved from the hood to like a college setting, I didn't want to hear any of that social justice shit. I just wanted to party, right? And I just wanted to like have fun. And so similarly with Cardi B, people forget that like it was her trans friend that like joked about this, right? And who encouraged Cardi B to put this skit out that was really violently trans antagonistic, right? And so Cardi B in her apology was like, I'm sorry that I said these things, and I'm sorry that I used a T slur, right? But my trans friend uses it, right? And I thought it was okay, blah blah blah. And then we forget that like queer and trans people, like we're not a fucking monolith, especially like when we're talking about like socioeconomic statuses, right? Like people like I when I was 15 to like 18, I used to go to like this youth center, right? And it was mostly like homeless, queer and trans, brown and black folks, right? Mostly Latinx, brown and black folks, and we were all problematic as shit, right? And so when I think of like this mishap that she had, right? I think about how like yeah, her friend probably thought that was okay for her to do, and she apologized, so I forgave her for that. But again, like the thing about apologies is that like, especially when they affect whole communities, is that one person doesn't cannot forgive someone for the whole community, right? So I'm holding that complexity. I also know that she's been like hurtful to a lot of Asian communities, right? So I'm like also holding that, right? And I'm not gonna be like, how dare you say that about her? Like she didn't mean it like bad, like blah blah. Like no, she meant to be hurtful, and I can hold that complexity, right? I think that acknowledging the fact that like our faves can be fucked up, right, is okay. Um, and I think I wrote about like how there's a difference between being like fucked up and being abusive, right? One of them like can hurt you like emotionally, can hurt you, has the possibility to do so, whereas being abusive actively does hurt someone, right? So that's that. I think that she can do she'll do better. Um, yeah, and I also talked about on the podcast how like I used to be like a huge Azealia Banks fan, and I'm actually like low key gonna see her at the end of the month, and I haven't really like talked about that because I know that people don't like her, and I know she's like been fucked up. I also know that like as like a black woman, like she's had to face things that like no one else has, but at the same time she's been horribly fucked up. I don't know. I'm not gonna defend that either, like that whole situation. I know that like I shouldn't defend her at all, especially as it's come out that like apparently she was like tight with Milo um Yiannopoulos, that dude. So yeah, that's where I'm at. No one has talked in the chat for a minute. I'm wondering if y'all can hear me. um yeah, so I have like 10 minutes left on this. Any questions, anything that I just said right now, just like hit y'all want to talk about? Yeah, she has a lot of room to grow. Like I think she's only like 24 too. Like something that I like to tell people is that like, and then I talk about my lecture is that like, so most of my when I talk about being a community healer and a community organizer, the first 4 years of my organizing was problematic folks, right? And it was mostly with sex workers and drug addicts, right? And it was a lot of me helping folks like deal with trauma and also finding them homes, right? And so people don't a lot of the times people don't see that as community work or like social justice work, but like as I've learned more, like I began to like acknowledge that, because to me like when I was like 20, like 22, like 19, like I just saw myself as like a house mother, right? Like I but like house mothers do social justice work, right? And so that's something that like I'm realizing now. And it's also like weird to think of myself as like a mother, but like that's kind of what I've been to some people, and it's the way some people see me too. Um, and so I've also held that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'll still stand Azealia Banks, TBH. I'm gonna see her, but I don't stand her. And I actually am following her on Twitter. Um, because I saw her making fun of Sia's like drug addiction, and like I thought that was like really rude, like nasty. And then when her recent like spat at Cardi B, like that was kind of bad. Yeah. Um, she like denied like Cardi B's blackness, and it's like Cardi B is like black, and she's like not someone who like denies it, right? Um, and so I was like really hurt that Azealia Banks would take that route. Um, so so yeah. For Halloween, I'm gonna be a unicorn, I think. Oh, okay. I was like confused about who you stand, Brandon, TBH. Which, by the way, let it be known, me and Brandon have been like mutuals forever. I don't know what this bitch looks like or sounds like at all. I just know that I love this bitch. Um, they have been following. We have been following each other before I even had a platform. It's been weird. But I'm glad you're here. Um, yeah. But no, I'm gonna be a unicorn for Yeah. AB's okay, so Azealia Banks, honestly, and you can grill me for this and like expose me. I think Azealia Banks has the best flow of any female rapper that I've ever heard in my life. Like, hands down. And I think that's why a lot of us stan her, because we understand that she's talented as shit, but she's also like hurtful as shit, right? Um, so yeah, feel free to cancel me for that comment. But I want to be a unicorn for Halloween, but I'm like I want to be glittery, and I want to be glow in the dark, because my only plan for Halloween is to go see Kesha, and after that I'm gonna go home and sleep, because I'm old. I'm 28. Um, so yeah, but I've been having a hard time finding like a glittery like bodysuit or whatever. I like in my perfect mind, I have like a glittery like overall shorts situation going on, and then I'll like paint my face in like glow in the dark makeup or whatever. Um, so those are my future plans. Um, I'm gonna speak in Stanford like less than 2 weeks from now. And that's like fucking huge for me, because like I didn't even apply to Stanford because like I didn't think I was like deserving enough for that. So that's fucking astounding that like people from Stanford like me enough to book me. Um, Shit. I think I'm gonna like wear like a wig like Rihanna to imitate like Rihanna's hair when she went to Harvard, and she was like, I'm speaking to Harvard, bitch. But it'll be like me in Stanford. Um because yeah, like holy shit, who the fuck am I? I'm just like this like brown like femme bitch who like talks shit online. Um Lemonhead is a glitter body paste brand. I'll look that up. Yeah. Um But yeah, Elva, nationalism is a huge issue, and it's hard to get past. And it's hard to get past because a lot of us are taught that our nationality is our race, right? In Latin America specifically, right? Um, because it's like so weird. It's so weird because in the U.S., like that's kind of been like the subliminal message of things. But as white nationalism gains like popular media attention, um, folks start to like latch on to or connecting Americanness to whiteness. And actually, I think that oftentimes whiteness and being American are connected, right? And so people forget that like Latin America, in some ways, was the prototype for that, right? In a lot of ways, being like Argentinian or Mexican or Cuban or like Salvadorian, to a lot of folks that meant looking like like a light skinned brown person, right? Which is another way of like another form of ethno nationalism, right? And people forget that Latin America, we serve as a prototype for that, and so we need to fight. I think Latinxes, like we got to fight this fucking wave of nationalism that's fucking taking over, like harder than a lot of people, because we should know better. We should know that this happened already, and that like it has fucking violent repercussions, right? Like Afro Mexicanos, Mexicanexes didn't get recognized until like fuck, like less than a decade ago, right? Like how are we gonna let that manifest in the U.S. when we saw that already happen, right? And that shit's violent. Um, Lemonhead. I'm Yeah, Brandon. I'm a Stanford bitch now, I guess. Oh, Brandon. Yeah, it's the first time you heard me speak. Thanks. Yeah. No, like we've been friends online forever, and I think you understand my humor. And it's been weird that we like have never like crossed paths, even though we've been mutuals for like fucking ever. And we live fairly close to each other. We should set up like a dinner, like a lunch or something. Stanford, that's amazing. I feel like Fashion Nova's gotta have some glittery body. Fashion Nova, I've never heard of them. Yeah, no, we gotta fight our families over the nationalism issue. I mean, luckily, I came from a family that really hated the Mexican government and the Mexican state. Um, Brandon, DM me. We'll have lunch. We'll have drinks. You're also an old bitch, so like let's go get drinks when you want to. Um, yeah, it's something that I like. I wasn't really raised on that nationalism, right? Like we hated the flag. We hated Mexico overall, right? But when I exited my family, like I saw like a lot of people being hella like all about Mexico, right? Um, and for me that was I don't know how to celebrate mestizaje, and I don't know how to celebrate the state without acknowledging the fact that it's like violent and erasing, and it's just like the worst. And I don't mean to be like a downer. It's just the shit. Like, fuck. Like, it is what it is, homies. Um. Okay. So in less serious news, I made out with this really cute fam, and we were like had a really good time, and um. So I met this fam, and he was. You won't believe it. This bee fell on this person, and this person was freaking out, and this fam carried the like she he was like, it's okay, and he cupped the bee from this person's arm, and then cupped it in his hand, and then went to go place it on the rose that the bee chose, right? So he was like holding like the bee to every rose until the bee was like, this is the one. And then the bee flew away from his hand, and as I saw this happen, I fell in fucking love, and and um and I acted like I was lost, and I asked this person for directions, and uh and then when he gave me directions, I like pretended like I'm really good at playing like a blonde like bimbo. Um yeah. I'm like I like watch Legally Blonde thoroughly. So like I learned like the blonde bimbo accent. Like, oh my god, what do I do? Like I like figured that out really easily, and I also like I'm pretty shitty. Like I know that like as a femme, like I also know that like I am seen as like whatever. Whatever. I played a lot of stereotypes to my fucking favor. And this other femme, they walked me to where I was trying to go, and then they asked me to dinner, and then we had dinner, and he was amazing. Only thing is that like he doesn't live in my town, but we had a good time, and I really appreciate that he understood where I was coming from for a lot of things, right? No, yeah, he was an angel. Oh my god, as I was watching him from afar, like placing this fucking bee in a fucking rose, I was like, you have to be fucking kidding me! Like this is not what humans do. Um, and yeah, so I was really lucky, and um, we were always very communicative, right? And that's something that I really appreciate in lovers or whatever. And that was really fucking great. Yeah. Uh, so like I have gone over time. I know there's a lot of folks here who didn't check in. So if you want to check in really quick or ask anything really quick or like call me out of my shit real quick, like I'm down with that. Like is I'm okay with that. This has been one of my more successful um, live streams. So yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna wait a minute. If nobody has any questions, then I'm gonna log out. Until then, I'm just gonna tell you what my future projects are gonna be, right? So I'm gonna release the first chapter of one of my books that I actually had planned to self-publish earlier this year, but I was in a horrible car accident where I lost my car, and I lost all my savings, um, and I'm now like dealing with like legal repercussions, right? So before that, I was about to pay like an artist to bring my book to life, because I'm a comic book writer. So I don't only read comic books, I also write them. But I can't draw for shit. Um, but the first chapter of that, the script, will be out in the next couple of weeks for patrons who are over $10. Right? My fiction is always gonna be private, just because I it's personal. My fiction is really personal. Um, so that'll be coming out, and then the next chapter. I think I'll release a chapter every 2 months, right? I think I'll release a chapter of this comic book, and then the next one I'll release a non sequitur piece of fiction, etc., etc. But no, thanks for coming through, Brandon. Was really I was kind of upset that you didn't originally take the reward, and that's just because like I don't I don't know how to word this, but I want people to have the rewards, and that's why I'm putting more into each reward, is because like I I don't care so much about the amount that people give me, but I want to know who, like, and I know that like even $1 is a lot for people, but I know but even folks who can afford $1 a month, like I want to know, I want to give them as much as I can. So that's my thing. Um, so yeah, so I'm glad you accepted the reward, Brandon. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that y'all are here. This has been my most like my least interactive live stream, but my most watched live stream while it happened live. So if nobody has a question in the next minute, I'm gonna log off. I'm gonna kill my drink, and then I'm gonna go party with a friend. Yeah. I'm gonna make another drink. Thanks, honey. Yes. No, my the third episode of Bitter Brown Fence will come out on Tuesday. It's gonna be long, but it's our funnest episode yet. I guarantee you. I guarantee you that for the hour, I'm gonna try to make it an hour and a half tops. For the hour and a half that episode lasts, you're gonna be entertained. I guarantee that. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna log off. We're gonna have another live stream next week. I hope y'all show up. I was really glad a lot of people showed up. So I'll see y'all later.